I can still remember the very first time that I read this book. I was home from university for Christmas and I was interested in the kind of hype that was surrounding a new book, and I wasn't really that interested in the author. I'd never heard of the author before, and I wasn't all that interested in the premise of the story, but because it was one of these books that everyone was talking about, I felt like I had to read it to see what kind of all this hype was about. And so I picked up The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, and my life hasn't been the same since. And that might sound completely and utterly ridiculous to say that, but I can promise you that this book is a life changer, and I just kind of wanted to talk about this book and why I love it and what it means to me. Like I say, when I first read it, it was the late 2012, and I had just picked it up from the library, and at that time there wasn't so much of a hype around the book. It was, you know, kind of in the bestseller charts and lots of people talking about it, but it wasn't anywhere near the kind of level of kind of in the whole everyone's kind of peripheral vision. It wasn't slap bang in the middle of everything that was going on. And I loved the cover, and I just wanted to read this book, and I read it and I didn't love it. The first time I read it, I didn't love it. I left the book with a sense of anger and kind of distrust and a slight sense of hatred towards John Green as an author, and I thought, how can a man create such a perfect fictional world with two perfectly flawed characters and drag us into this whole tale of love and adoration and just pure and utter just love, and then just drop us out of it and leave us sitting at the end of the book without these characters in our lives anymore. And I hated John Green for the fact that he had created this perfect world and then just dropped me out of it after 300 or so pages. I had to get on with my real life, and I couldn't deal with what he'd done. I couldn't understand why this book could ever end. And I know that's a strange thing to say, because all books end. They're, you know, they're not infinite. They're small, finite chunks of just pure pleasure and escape into different worlds. But when I read this, I didn't want this to end, and I was frustrated that it did end. And as much as I'd loved the story, I just could not get past this feeling that I had of disappointment and kind of complete and utter fear that nothing that I read could ever compare to this book ever again. And so I took it back to the library with a kind of feeling that it was a good book, but it wasn't a book that I was going to spend a lot of time worrying about, because it was a book that I couldn't think about without feeling myself get angry and upset and just completely emotional at what had happened. And so my quest to forget The Fault in Our Stars began, and it took me a whole 2 days before I caved in. And I decided that I wanted to know more about John Green. I wanted to know more about his story. I wanted to know more about why he decided to write this book. And I wanted to know what he was like as a person, because when I'd read this book I could feel John's voice. I could see the way that he was. And so I googled John Green, and the first thing that I came across was a video on YouTube of John reading the first chapter of The Fault in Our Stars. And by this point I'd taken the book back to the library, so I didn't have it on me. And I clicked on it and I watched the video, the whole half-an-hour video of John Green reading the first chapter of his book, and I will link that in the description box below. And I fell in love. I genuinely fell in love with this man, and the way that he read his own writing and the way that he was telling the story was just unlike any other author I've ever seen before in my life. And suddenly these words that were on a page and had half come to life when I'd read them suddenly burst into just colour and vibrance, and every word that he said was just, I was hanging on to every single syllable. And as he read, I just fell in love with his intelligence and his wit and his creativity and his pure love for what he was doing. And as I watched the video, I found out more about John and his reasons for wanting to write this book, and all about Esther Earl, who was the most amazing girl who had to unfortunately go through cancer and lost her battle, but before she lost her battle she fought with everything she had to encourage people to be happy and live. And the fact that John Green was such good friends with her and dedicated this book to her just goes to show that sometimes in life it's not about kind of what you do in your life that makes a difference, it's who you affect when you are living, and the memories that, or the memory that you should want when you die is the memory that lives on in other people. And it doesn't matter if you don't create the cure for cancer, or if you don't have to be a superstar, because it doesn't matter that you haven't made anything of your life, because you've affected people with your love and your life, and that's something that's the most important of all. And I just decided that I needed to buy this book to just have. And so I bought the book, and pretty much as soon as I bought the book I heard that there was going to be a film version of The Fault in Our Stars, and my first reaction to that is the reaction that it always is when I hear about a film from a book, and I was devastated that this book will be turned into a film. And it was devastation more of a selfish nature, because I was completely and utterly heartbroken that people would be able to see our story, that the story that John Green and I had created together from his words and my pictures and my interpretation of what he'd written, and it felt like such a personal and private thing. And all of a sudden this book and my story was going to be told through using real people and going to be seen by people that might not have even read the book. And I felt incredibly upset that people would be watching this film and not have even read the book, and I felt a great kind of sense of not distaste but regret that this was happening, and that I felt angry at John for allowing this to happen, because I thought he would be the person that would say no, we don't want a film. But my mind quickly changed, because as soon as I heard that John Green was going to be behind the film every step of the way, I realised that this was going to be a very special film, and this would not just be a film of the book, this would be a film of a love story that was timeless and could be told through hundreds of different mediums and still have that rare effect of just pure and utter kind of, I can't even put into words what it does, but it's just a rare feeling that it gives you of just pure joy and love for people that you know aren't real. And I watched a lot of John Green's vlogs as he was going through the process of making the film, and I watched and I saw that he was so invested in what he was doing, and he was there every single day watching the filming going on, making friends with the cast. And it suddenly dawned on me that this was something that needed to happen. People needed to see Hazel and Gus's story, and it was selfish of me to think that people who hadn't read the book should not be able to share their story, because their story should be shared, their story should be told. And if some people find that the only way they can appreciate art is through film, then it's important that they are able to enjoy and share with the story as well. And I am just in awe of John Green as a person, and he is my hero. He is the most intelligent and creative and just most human person that I know. He understands the human condition more than a lot of people, and he just has this kind of need to help others and to share what he's learned, and by sharing what he's learned he learns new things. And the way that he conducts his life is just incredible, and I am in awe of him as a man. And I just, the second that I saw him read that first chapter, I knew that this was a man that I was going to love, and I love him still, and I've got all of his books and I've read them all. And yesterday I reread The Fault in Our Stars, and it was an incredible experience. When I first read the book, in my head I had my own Gus and Hazel, but now I read it and I knew that Shailene and Ansel were going to play Gus and Hazel, and all of a sudden this book really came to life, and I could see Ansel and Shailene in these characters, and that's an amazing thing because they became those characters, and I wasn't resentful that those people had taken over the roles of my characters. I was just so happy that they were there with me on this story, and I know that I keep saying this is my story and my book, and that's a selfish thing to say, but when you read something by John Green, it's only then that you appreciate that what he's written is for you. He wrote this book for every single person that read it. He didn't write this book to be famous and to have money. He wrote it because he wanted people to enjoy and feel a connection with his words, and he has completely and utterly done that with what he's written here, and I am in love with this book. And I often hear a lot of criticism about the book and the characters, and the way that the way that they find this book frustrating is the way that the characters interact with each other. And I've heard many people say that the way that Hazel and Gus interact with each other is completely unbelievable and unrealistic because they're far too intelligent for teenagers, and normal teenagers don't speak like that. But what you have to realise is that firstly, John Green is like that. This is John Green's voice, and that's what makes it so powerful. And secondly, teenagers aren't stupid. Some teenagers are incredibly well read, and they can converse in the most kind of enthusiastic and quite mature ways, and it would be foolish of us to think that because we haven't been exposed to teenagers like that, that doesn't mean they don't exist. And I think what's more important is that the characters in this book, whilst they are characters and have their own character traits and stand for and represent a certain person, what they are more is, it's so hard to explain, but they are amalgamation of every single person that has been in their position, and they are the representation of more than one person and more than one idea. And the fact that people will just assume that that character is flawed because they wouldn't act like that in real life is sad, because that character is so unflawed, because they have the traits of every single person that's fought cancer and has been a teenager and understood what it's like to be alive and to not have the pleasure of knowing that they will live for a long time. And I just find that John Green has made these characters into characters that reflect more than just who they are. They're not what they are on the face of it. They're very deep and interesting characters, and what they stand for is so unique and so real and so honest. And I think that's kind of where people get confused, because they can't see that the characters aren't just static people, they are representations of a lot of different things. And I just love this book so much, and I am just so thankful to John Green for allowing us to be part of Hazel and Gus's life. And I've heard so many people say that this is a book about cancer, but this is not a book about cancer. This is a book about love, about first love, about coming of age, and about life and understanding where we belong in the world and what we are part of as being a human and what we experience in life. There is cancer in the book, but this book is not a cancer book, and that is the most important thing to take from it, is this book is a love story, and a love story that will stay with me until the day I die, because it has affected me in so many ways, and I cannot ever thank John Green enough for what he has written and created. And I'm sure that so many other fans will agree with me that The Fault in Our Stars is a book that is timeless and will live on in so many people's hearts and will be read for centuries and millennia to come. And John Green, thank you for writing this book. You will never ever know how much this book means to me and how much it has helped me, so thank you. You are a star.